Well, welcome back to another episode of the Wyld Way, where we want to inspire every man to live with eternal purpose every day, because we believe if you find your why, you will find your way. So Charles, we got an awesome guest with us this morning.
Yeah.
And so why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so first of all, before we pan the camera, we're going to tell you about this guy.
All right.
This guy.
Dramatic reveal.
This guy is a hometown hero.
Okay.
He's an author. Mm-hmm. He's a mentor.
Okay.
He's a motivational speaker.
Keep it going.
I don't know if he likes that term. Motivational speaker, a bodybuilder.
Yes!
I'm
getting excited.
Personal trainer. What
does he do?
He does it all, man.
Let's go.
Everybody, welcome our guest, Nate Evans Jr. to the podcast.
Thank you, fellas, for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, man.
Of course, bro. When we were thinking about this podcast, you were actually one of the first people that we thought of. We've been doing this since a couple months now, since October. We made a list out of all the people who we thought would be interesting, and I thought of you. I was like, yeah, we got to get my guy Nate on here.
Yeah, man. It's an honor. I appreciate it, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely.
So, listen, we just going to jump right in. Take us away, Billy.
All right, Nate, for people that don't know you, tell us where you're from, what's your story, if we met you in high school, who would you be, and paint that picture for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from Pleasantville, New Jersey. I grew up in both Pleasantville and Atlantic City, so kind of bounced around. Just a normal kid. Grew up in very challenging situations. So I went to 9 different schools from first grade all the way to high school.
Wow.
9 different schools within Pleasantville and Atlantic City. So I was bouncing around from charter school to this school to Uptown Complex to New Jersey Avenue, all these different places. But the place where I stayed most time at was a neighborhood called Woodland Terrace, or they call it Woodland Avenue Projects or whatever. And that's where I spent a lot of time with my mother and my brothers, and my cousins as well. So we all lived in one place, kind of bounced around from there, but it was very unstable. So you're struggling financially, trying to figure out, are the lights going to be on? We didn't have cable. I was big on cassettes, the VHS tapes and DVDs, because we used to watch them on repeat just over and over and over. Then you got cable, and YouTube wasn't really like a thing at the time. So that's kind of how I was raised. I was raised around loving people, but at the same time, you have violence, you have gangs, you have drugs, you have domestic abuse, you have mental health issues, all of these things within this community, and my outlet was basketball. It was the one thing where I felt like I was safe. People didn't bother me in that element, so I kind of gravitated to there. But I still was traumatized by a lot of the things that I seen and a lot of the things that I was around. So that kind of molded and shaped in my mind as a young kid going into like adolescence, was the things I seen at a young age. I was molested at a young age, which had a huge impact on me because I didn't understand how to express the emotions. I didn't feel comfortable telling anybody. There wasn't this welcoming feeling. So I kept a lot of stuff bottled in. I was really calm, cool, and collective. As a high schooler, really laid back, super laid back, but at the same time, low key, like the man, like low key. And that's not like me bragging or anything, but
This
it was
is his
like
favorite song.
Yeah.
I'm the man.
Nah, seriously, man. I ended up being prom king. We had this thing called Mr. Greyhound, which was like our talent thing. I was an all-star. Ended up, graduating, get a full ride scholarship for basketball. So I was really doing my thing, but at the same time, there was a lot of built-up trauma that was never addressed. And that, that definitely shaped my life right after that. And it swayed a lot of my decision making.
At what point did you feel like or recognize that those things had to be addressed? Like, what was it that made you say, I need to look into this?
Yeah, it was shortly after graduation. So I'm a first generation high school graduate. My parents didn't graduate from high school, they had me. Started working and things like that. So I was first generation high school graduate, and I had a scholarship to play ball down in Memphis, Tennessee. There's a school called Lamar Nolan College, it's a Division II school. And that was a huge deal for me and my family. So I'm going down to play ball, but about 2 weeks prior to me leaving to go to school, my papa passes away. Now, I shared that, and that's significant to the story because he was someone that was extremely close to me. Like, he played a huge hand in raising me and teaching me a lot of different things just by what I seen his example. he didn't have past a third grade education. So he was extremely excited about me going off to school. He was so excited he was going to drive me down to Memphis, Tennessee from New Jersey in his Astro van. Like he was, yo, we gotta go. He telling everybody in the neighborhood. He was that excited about it. And I remember coming home from playing basketball at the park, right? He was on the couch and he's sitting there. I'm like, man, why does he look like that? Like he really looked disheveled and things like that. I'm like, nah, I'm used to him being up, moving around, mowing the lawn, breaking something so he could fix it. Like whatever it was, he was that type of guy. Yeah. And to see him like this, I'm like, something's weird. So I asked my brother, I'm like, yo, what's going on with Papa? He's like, he's been like that all day. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe he's sick or something. Let's get him to the hospital, to the doctors. I don't know. So I just got my license, and I remember us like, yo, Papa, we're gonna take you to the hospital. And he's kind of like, nah, he's real reluctant about it. Now, I played basketball. I wasn't super huge at the time. I wasn't into lifting weights like that. Right. But my brother played football for Holy Spirit. I'm just like, yo, we're going to take him to the hospital. Like, he can't beat us both. So we literally grabbed him up. He can't beat us both. He can't beat us both. So we grabbed him up. I got the license. I got all of his information, and we shot him to the hospital. And we found out that he had a gangrene infection. And for most people that don't know, what it is it's like bacteria. And it was eating away at his intestines, so it was like no stopping it. Yeah. Wow. So at this point, it's like, oh, he's going to die very soon, and there's nothing, like no prayer about to take this away. It's like it's eating away at his intestines. Yeah. And that was a real surreal moment for me. And when he passed away, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It made me realize that I had been carrying a bunch of different trauma for so many years, and this was like the tipping point. Yeah. Right. You think of a Sprite bottle and you shake that thing up. At some point when you crack the top, what happens, it explodes. And I had got to that point. And that was when I realized I needed help, but I didn't get the help I needed. I kind of just brushed it off. Yeah. Because that's how I was raised. We weren't raised to address our emotions, to talk about certain things. I mean, where I grew up, you can be disrespected, called out your name, possibly jumped. Whatever it was, for expressing your emotions as a young male, especially as like a young black male. Right. So I bottled up a lot of stuff, and I didn't address a lot of things. And at that moment, I felt myself breaking down, and I knew I needed help, but I wasn't in the position or a mindset to be like, oh, let me go get the help.
Did you even know that help existed, or was that like, an option for you at the time?
I knew it existed. I didn't know it existed for me. Yeah. Like I knew it was out there. I knew that there was therapy and things like that. But at the same time, it was almost like it's for those people over there and it's not for you. Yeah. Because you can be looked at as crazy and all these different things. And it was a very toxic way of thinking. Yeah. But I knew it was there, but I just didn't get the help,
Absolutely.
Man, so, when did you decide to get the help? And then how did your community respond to when you decided to go to therapy or whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't get the help until like years later. So I graduated in 2008. Ended up going out to Memphis, Tennessee. I still went to school, even after all of this happened. I still went down there. It was my first flight like ever. I flew by myself down to Memphis. I stayed for a semester and I ended up leaving. Andre, I'm on a full ride scholarship. You know what I'm saying? My parents can't afford to send me to school. I leave, I come back home because I'm having all these anxiety attacks and depressed, all these things that happen. I'm drinking every night, hanging out, just all this stuff that was like out of my wheelhouse, right? It wasn't my normal behavior. I came home, worked a little bit, ended up getting another scholarship to play ball, but this time it was in New Mexico. I went to a military institute. I was out there for a year, but it was the same situation over again. It just repeated itself. Just because you travel somewhere else doesn't mean the problem is over. It's like, nah, just follow me to New Mexico. Right, yeah. And I was there for a year, same thing. I came back home, other things happened. I started working again. I lost a friend to suicide. Another friend had got locked up on gun charges. He's still there to this day. So it's all of these things I'm dealing with and battling with, and I'm still trying to find my place. Basketball was supposed to be that outlet for me. It's supposed to be the way to get me out. You hear that all the time, like I want to get out. Yeah. And that's what basketball was supposed to be for me. So I kept trying at it. I ended up in total going to 5 different schools. Bouncing around colleges. Literally bouncing around college to college to college. I was in North Jersey, I was here. I came back home and then I finally got settled and got my associate's degree at our local community college. And from there, things started to change a little bit because I had hit a rock bottom moment. it was to a point where I had graduated from ACCC. Schools are recruiting me for basketball, but I've already been out of college already been out of high school for X amount of years. So now it's like, okay, I need money. Like I got a car, I got a cell phone, I'm trying to sustain myself, possibly get a place. I can't play for free anymore.
Right.
So I ended up forfeiting all of my eligibility to play ball. And I actually went to Las Vegas, me and my girlfriend, and she's my fiance now. We're actually getting married this year.
That's great.
We ended up going to Las Vegas. I was out there for a week to do overseas combines and things like that. And I thought I did amazing. I'm like, this is my chance. This is what God had lined up for me. I knew you would come through.
Yeah.
Right? Always in a time of desperation, right? You probably So it's like, I knew you were gonna come through, and I'm like at home, I'm waiting for the call, a few days, nothing, a few weeks, nothing. I'm like, all right. So I'm getting back into that place of not feeling worthy, insecure, all of these traumas building up. And I ended up connecting with someone who was supposed to connect me with an overseas team. It's supposed to be an agent, right? And I'm like, this is perfect. He sends over the contract. The agent's like, yo, you just need this, this, and this. We can get you over here for this amount a month. I'm like, this is it. This is my shot. I just needed this shot. That's it. And I can run away from all of these problems. Long story short, the contract doesn't really check out. So I have friends that play professional basketball. So I showed them the contract, and there's like this clause at the end where he wants me to send him money. And I'm like, man, send him money? I thought y'all wanted me.
Right.
Checks out that this guy wasn't even an agent. It was just somebody trying to scam me that found me on the circuit. So you can imagine how that plays into everything else that I've already been through. Yeah. And I feel like I just got stepped on. And I had gotten a really dark spot. We were, I was back home. We had got evicted from our home. Me, my mom, my brothers, my cousins. My nanny was living with us at the time. My mom's dad, like all of us had got evicted from this house. And I'm just trying to find places to live. And I remember playing basketball at the rec center, our local rec center. Going up for a dunk, guy undercuts me. I fall, twist my ankle. Which, I twisted my ankle a lot, playing ball. It just happens. I'm bow-legged and pitching, so it just happens. Right? And I remember, a few weeks goes by, my ankle's feeling better, but there's still this weird, feeling going on. So I remember one day I'm sitting on the bed, and I hit my foot on something. I'm like, that's weird. I didn't feel nothing. So I grabbed this pen top, and I rubbed it across the bottom of my foot, and there's no feeling. So I panicked, like a normal person would.
Yeah.
I panicked, and we ended up going to the hospital, having them check it out, and I tore a bunch of ligaments in my ankle. Yeah. So I had to put a boot on. Put the boot on, and for somebody who is always active, who's always trying to run from their issues and things like that, trying to stay busy, to not have to address certain things, the most challenging thing to do is have to sit and kind of be in a place where you have to sit with your thoughts.
Right. Oh yeah.
So that's when I really started to recognize, these thoughts are terrible. The way I'm talking to myself is terrible. And during that time, I had gotten such a dark place that I started to have suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. That was a real thing. It was that dark. And I was blessed to have a really, really close friend to mine, my brother, my guy, Tony Chapman. He's in the Air Force. He started taking me to the gym. And that's when the turnaround kind of happened. He took me with the boot on and everything. He was like, yo, you're getting out the house. Let's roll. He was literally coming to my house, beep, 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 knocking on the door. Miss Cassie, he got to roll. And he started taking me to the gym. And what happened was powerful because he introduced me to two other men, right, that looked just like me. Now, when I think of masculinity, I think of these dudes, beards, huge, tattoos. I'm like, these dudes are. These are them guys that are chewing steak like that. But it was powerful because what we would do before we worked out, we would sit in the locker room and have conversation. For 35 to 40 minutes, how we are right here, we would have conversation. We'd be pouring our pre-workout, talking, and we weren't talking about typical things that like barbershop talk. It wasn't about sex and girls. It wasn't about, we rarely even talked about sports. It was about real life situations and about the things we were struggling with. And that was when my mind started to become free to this concept of being vulnerable. Yeah. And from there, things started to shift around and I felt more comfortable in who I was. And I started to look back and realize okay, all of this stuff happened for a reason. And God was putting me on this path. I thought basketball was my way out. But basketball was a resource for me to build up a testimony to come back and share. And from there, things just kind of changed. I started writing. I have a gift in literature and writing. I love to write. So I started writing put my whole story down, the lessons that I learned from all of it, and turned that into my first book. And from there,
Plug your first book. Title.
Yeah. The first book is it's called Building Muscle, Life is Your Trainer. And it was a play off of just that whole situation of me coming to the gym and kind of finding myself and really understanding like, oh, the real strength is in being vulnerable and being transparent. As growing up, it was in being tough, you know, acting hard and all these different things and trying to sleep with all these women. It's like, nah, that wasn't it. The real strength was in me sharing my story. The real strength was in me asking for help. That was way harder than anything else I had ever done. And from there, you know, graduated from Rowan University, ended up getting my bachelor's degree, became a personal trainer, won a bunch of awards and things like that, built my clientele up, partnered with a bunch of different people. I was partnered with Nike in Atlantic City, Old Navy, the community college. I did events everywhere in Philadelphia, out here with a few different people. And then I had got baptized. So interesting enough, I was baptized before, but it was kind of like to make somebody else happy.
Right.
I want to do this so my mom is happy. I want to do this because I want to show you that I'm doing this, but it was never for me. So I had made a decision, and I'll never forget, I was driving home from school one day at Rowan, and they called me like, hey, you put your name on the list to get baptized. I was like, yeah, I did do that. They said, yeah, this Sunday, if you're ready at 10:45, we're going to do it. And just like, in my brain, I was like, nah, this ain't the right time. And then I had this moment in like a second where it was like, the fact that you think that this isn't the right time is affirmation that it's the right time.
Wow.
And I went through, got baptized, rededicated my life to Christ, and started going to therapy.
Wow.
And things really changed for me. My life changed from there. And, you know, people started requesting me and asking me to come out and share my story. And from there, it turned into a whole business.
I have so many questions,
bro.
But
How much time you got, Nate?
Nate,
this is exactly like for everybody. Yeah, I know you. And you just met me. You probably haven't kept up with Charles. This is exactly everything we've been talking about. Right. So just so excited that you're here. And man, so Charles, what's your first? What do you want?
My first question. I want to take back a little bit. So you said in the gym, you guys would have conversations and you learned how to be vulnerable. But my question is, so how did your best friend, Tony, know to show up at your house and get you out? So did you have conversations with him before that? Like, were you vulnerable with him before you were with this larger group of men?
Yeah. So we did have conversations. They were pretty surface level. Like, I didn't go deep because I still had everything kind of closed in where I was kind of nervous to be like, you're going to judge me.
Right.
So it was little things I would say, but I think that's the power in having real, true friends.
Right.
Like, I don't think, you know, everybody's your friend. And that's not a bad thing. You know, 'cause we have this social media where it's like, these are my friends. Or you'll just say it out of nowhere. Oh, that's my friend over there. It's like, well, that's not really friend.
Yeah.
Like, friends are sacred. Yeah. And I felt like he was very attentive and noticing different patterns in me. And when he noticed those patterns, he stepped in a powerful way, man. And I just think that's God making a move in him. You know, the Spirit is kind of like, hey, go check on him. Because he didn't have to do that, but he did. And that right there really like solidified our relationship as like brothers.
Right.
And that's really where things shifted. But we did have a few conversations, but they were never, I would say, that deep. Not at that point, at least. Like, now they're on a whole nother level. We dive right in. But like then at the time, I was still kind of cautious. I'm like, man, this is my boy, but I don't want to, you know, push him away by expressing this.
Right. I don't want him to judge me.
And he wasn't even, the reality is he wasn't. And most people aren't judging.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy the way it's set up, you know, thinking that somebody's going to judge you, and it's like they probably really not even thinking much about you. To be completely honest.
They're too preoccupied with themselves. So.
Yeah. Way too preoccupied with themselves.
It's so hard to tell somebody, like, listen, you're important, but you're not important to them.
That's a real thing.
So, yeah, man, we have a saying we've just kind of worked into our vocabulary. We're brothers on accounts. Right? So it's like, okay, we've been building a community, we got a small group, and like we're pursuing God, we're keeping it real, but then somebody's gonna go through a real struggle, and you're like, man, I'm gonna have to drop things, I'm gonna have to make sacrifices for this guy. And then it's like, okay, that's what we do. We're brothers on accounts. And so I love that example of your buddy. And over time, there's that trust that's built. You learn to open up, and you do that. What's so cool in a community of men, it's other men's examples that taught you how to be vulnerable, and that was a strength. It wasn't the muscle. It wasn't the plates on the side.
Nah, it wasn't.
So can you talk to us a little bit more about, like, you know, what was that moment like in that gym, and how did that kind of shape your self-image, your identity, and then how did you really learn to say, man, I got to talk about the fact that I've had mental health issues. I was molested. I keep running and I'm not going anywhere fast. How did you really learn to do that? Because I think there's a lot of people that are struggling. We just had an episode on releasing burdens. And letting go of the things of the past and letting go of burdens, our mistakes, things that have happened to us. So how did that practically work itself out for you in this community event?
Yeah, what it did was it exposed me to just a new level of thinking. It exposed me to what strength is, and by them, you know, almost unintentionally doing that, it gave me permission to like release myself. Not that I needed the permission, but it was in a way like an affirmation, like, hey, it's cool that you can do that around us and not feel judged or anything like that. So it really, again, it opened me up in a way where I was able to really expand my mind to a new way and just put me on a path to healing that I didn't know that I needed. You know, they were really examples for me.
Yeah.
And I believe that, you know, just with divine timing and everything like that, that God kind of orchestrated it to be that way, where you would bring people that look like me and express themselves in this way. Because I already have my mind made up of like who they were when I seen them. I'm like, okay, these typical dudes, this. And just to have my mind blown as we're talking, I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so not used to this. But then I realized it was something that I desperately needed. And it was something I was constantly running from. So it really shaped me, those experiences that we had. And I like lived for those. We used to train like 5-6 days a week. And I was like, man, we were there early, 7 a.m. It's like, I'm gonna be there at 6:45. I loved it, everything about it. Like my fiance would tell you, I was like obsessed with going. It was like therapy for me. It was my first round of like conversational therapy. And I just felt great afterwards. And it helped me to really step into my truth of like, all right, this is why you're here. To really serve and to really help and to really help other men that are struggling just like you to gain this healing that they need, to understand like, it's okay to be vulnerable. We should normalize these things.
Yeah.
And those fellas, they normalized it within that locker room. And we built a tight bond and a brotherhood that you can see the light off of those relationships outside of the gym. And we used to get at it in the gym. You know, we were in great shape, all this stuff, but we were ultimately great men. And that's what was being cultivated within that locker room. And that really shaped me. Just my entire, life after that has been like predicated off of those moments that we built together. It's like the foundation of where everything started. That's literally like that turning point where I could have went really dark, or I could have went to this other side where things got better. And those conversations really helped me to steer myself in another direction that has been beneficial to me and the people around me and my family.
So how did those conversations and your going to therapy change how your family interacts or how you interact with your family?
Yeah, it made it, at first it made it awkward, to be completely honest. Because I was exposed to things that my family wasn't necessarily exposed to. Like I said, I was very intentional about getting my healing and gaining understanding and figuring out, all right, what's going on, Nate? Why do you feel this way? Why do you think this way? But after a while, it allowed me to be more bold with my family about my healing, about the things that have bothered me, about the things that I've seen and I've been through. And at first, I can tell there was a little bit of pushback, kind of like, oh, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do that.
Oh yeah.
But I was very persistent because I knew what it's like on the other side. Like, it was so much better on this side, but we have to address the elephant in the room. And over time, I can see that my family, especially like my mom, my dad, my brother, things are slowly changing and they're kind of following my lead, So it's been powerful because I've been the one to be able to step up, like, look, we're gonna do this different. We don't have to keep going down this way of suffering. We can do this different and really, really mentally start to heal ourselves, allow God to heal us. But if we keep closing them out, it's not gonna happen. Like, we all know that this is an issue, but nobody wants to address it. So it actually helped me to step into a more dominant role, or not even dominant, more bold and confident role of like, oh, we need this, especially because I have a younger brother who's 8 years old and I have a nephew and a niece. I'm like, they can't go through this. So we got to break this now. So that put like a sense of urgency in me. Yeah. But I'm seeing the benefits and the fruits of the labor with this because my family, they're starting to seek the help and things that they need personally. Yeah. Because at the same time, you know, you have your parents, right? And you only see them as your parents. Forgetting that they, you know, they're people too. They had parents, they had friends. So I was able to go ahead and sit down with them, you know, individually and have conversations. Like my dad talked about him and my papa, you know, how things were challenging, how he was, you know, given all of this material stuff, but on the back end, he was missing this other aspect in regards to love. And then my mom and her situations and the things she's went through and how she was touched and how this happened. We were able to really address some things, and that allowed me to really empathize with them. And yeah, slowly but surely, things are changing for the better.
Man, that's so real, especially for Black families. You know, because you know some stuff, but we just don't talk about that stuff.
Touch it, bro.
Keep pushing on.
Talk about it.
Act like it's all gravy when it ain't.
That's real,
that's
man.
Powerful.
That's real. It's like you think about, and I joke about this because it's such a real thing. But you have that one person in your family. It's that's your uncle. He's just crazy, and you realize like, oh, he's not crazy. He was going through some stuff.
Right.
Oh, you know, he just like I remember once. My pop saying like, oh, you know, we alcoholics in this family. And I started to think in my mind like, oh, this joint is passed down through the bloodstream. Like this is a DNA, like I'm gonna be an alcoholic. And you realize like, no, y'all just made bad choices. Right? I don't have to do this. Yeah. You know, so it's a lot of different misconceptions and different things that as I got, you know, older and I started to explore certain things and learn more and obviously go to therapy and things like that. It's like, oh, these were issues we could have addressed. Right. You know, he wasn't crazy. He was going through some issues. He was depressed. Yeah. That's why he did that. Yeah. You know, so I'm trying to break things down to a very practical way with my family. Right. And like I said, it's slowly but surely changing.
That's great, man. That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm curious how your spiritual journey coincided with your journey of healing and probably growth in your own identity and how you understood yourself. So how do those stories weave themselves together? Yeah. So after I got baptized, for whatever reason in your head you get baptized, I'm coming up the water, of course I'm new, I'm in the hole, things are changing. It's like, I still got anxiety. Why do I still have anxiety, Lord? Like, what's going on? I dedicated myself and it just wasn't true, you know. There were still certain things I had to do. For me, I needed a therapist. I need to have practices put in place. And for me, I started to explore, you know, my spirituality, and then also explore this other field of like mental health. And I was blessed to go to a conference, and this kind of ties into the book a little bit, but I was blessed to go to this conference and meet somebody named Dr. Anita Phillips. She's a pastor, but she's also, I believe she's a therapist. And she was kind of talking about the concept of Jesus and mental health. And she was tying them in, and it was like, oh my goodness, I never knew. Okay, Jesus died for that as well. Yeah. Right. You know, there's scriptures that talk about these certain things. And it really opened my mind to really want to dive more into the word or dive more into the word and also focus on this relationship with Jesus. Right, really focus on this thing and realize like, okay, it's not just over spiritualized, we're gonna pray and everything's gone. You grew up in a way where it's like, yo, pray it away. Yeah. But it's like, I can't pray it away, like I'm having a breakdown. Like this isn't the time for that. I need help. Right. You know, some people may even need, you know, medicine for these certain things. Right. And that's okay. Yeah. That doesn't mean that God is less God. You know what I'm saying? Totally. Preach. God is bringing resources into your life for a reason. There's a reason this therapist is in your life and it feels like the right person. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I started to tie the two together and realize that you kind of need both. Yeah. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? You need both. You can't be spiritually right if you're not mentally right. It just doesn't work. You can't skip over the mental part and just go straight to spiritual. Yeah. Like, I'm spiritually healthy, but mentally you're still the same. You're still the same. Right. It doesn't work that way. And I realized that, okay, if I can get mentally right, spiritually I can get closer to God. Totally. You know?
Great, man. I want to jump into this book. You got anything before we jump into it?
Yeah, I would say before we jump into the book, and super excited about that, what would you say to somebody who's listening right now and kind of teetering on the edge? They got stuff, right? They're thinking, like, things are coming to their mind right now, and they're like, man, I don't know if I should really open up and talk to somebody about this. What encouragement would you give to them?
Yeah, my encouragement is, you know what it's like on the other side of not getting the help or not talking about it. You know how that makes you feel. It makes you feel alone. It makes you feel like you're in a dark place. You know, it's uncomfortable. You don't like it. Sometimes you may not even like yourself. So because you know for sure what it's like on the other side, it's like, why not try this side of releasing it and just see? I'm not guaranteeing that anything's gonna happen, but why not see? You know what I'm saying? It's like quitting on something. Like, I know that if I'm climbing this rope and I let go, I'm gonna hit the floor.
Yeah.
But I don't know what happens if I continue to try to keep climbing. I don't know. I might get to the top. I might be able to ring the little bell that's on the roof. I don't know. But I know for a fact, if I stop and I let go, I'm gonna hit the floor.
Right.
So because I know that, it's like, why not try something different? So that would be my insight with that, my offer.
It's great.
Jesus of therapy.
I'm actually, I may be possibly teaching a connect group at my church this summer, called Jesus Plus Mental Wellness. So at the end of last year, probably like the last 3 to 4 months of last year, obviously we were in a pandemic. If you know anything about mental health, a lot of the issues arise closer to the holidays or closer to, you know, the end of the semester for students. So I started to put out these little videos on Instagram and YouTube titled Jesus Plus Mental Wellness, where I would share a scripture, talk about it, and kind of tie it into mental wellness and what God has to say about it. So it's a really, really important now.
Absolutely. Huge proponent of that.
Yeah.
You know, there's some, like, we need spiritual solutions for spiritual problems, and we need mental solutions for mental problems, right? And those things are not necessarily clean buckets. You know, there's a lot of interplay between the two and how we use our bodies. I think I'm a huge proponent too of just being active, especially as a guy. You gotta get in the gym. Like, you're not designed to sit inside in an air-conditioned room all day.
Yeah.
That's literally not what your body's for. So, like, how we release all this energy, man, you gotta go do something. Right? I don't care if you're a sports person or not. Figure it out. Yeah, like, we gotta use that. So it's all these things together.
Yeah, this is your temple, man. You got to honor God with all of you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like sitting around reading all day. You know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I don't think you should be reading, you know, scripture for 10 hours and you haven't got up and taken a walk.
Do a couple push-ups.
You know what I'm saying? Anything to get the blood flowing, you know what I'm saying? So,
I'm like, you know how someone is like Elijah, right? When he's depressed and he comes to God, he's like, all right, we'll deal with that. But you need some food. You need back-to-back naps.
Right. Yeah.
Sure enough. And then here's some more food. It's like God treats us as whole human beings, right?
Eat some food.
You know? And then I think it was so easy for us to divide. Like, guys, you know, you ever like waffle brain? It's like, you know, these issue by issue, like, and it's so easy for us to devise, oh, that has nothing to do with this. Well, maybe it does. Maybe you need to really sort that out. And you have no idea how these things of the past are impacting your present issues, right? Or how you think and how you act. So, love your story, man. It's such an encouragement to just, let's deal with this stuff and be free. You know, you have no idea what's on the other side. So. All right, well, yeah, let's jump into the book.
Yes. All right. So, Nate Evans, your newest book, I Love You, Letters of Love from Black Men to Black Boys. First of all, that is an amazing title. Why specifically Letters of Love from Black Men to Black Boys?
yeah, so I told you about the experience at the gym and how powerful that was, that they look like me. I don't know how powerful that would have been if it was women or someone of a different cultural background. So about 2 years ago, we went to a mental health conference, me and my fiance, down in Washington, D.C. Taraji P. Henson, famous actor, she has her own nonprofit organization called the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, named after her father. And she threw this entire conference called Can We Talk, right? And at this conference, the theme of the conference was to bring together Black mental health professionals. So I'm talking, you know, brain surgeons, therapists, whatever. Everybody was in this place, plus a few celebrities, because she's a celebrity, of course. And the idea was to bring in resources to eradicate the stigmas around mental health in African-American communities and underserved communities, to really start to normalize these conversations. That's why they call it Can We Talk? Right. And if you've ever been to like a professional conference, there's all these different sessions going on. So one of the first sessions I go to is titled Man Up. And I meet this guy named Dr. Michael Lindsay. He's a professor at NYU. And he starts his presentation And he says, love black men and children as if they've never been hated. And I was like, bro, woof.
Wow.
I'm like looking around the room like, anybody else hear that? And he went on to this whole presentation about, you know, mental health and black adolescents and black youth, particularly boys, and the suicide rates and how it's skyrocketed, you know, over the past few years. And this was new information to me. I never knew this, right? So somebody who grew up struggling with mental health issues, I'm like, I can identify with a lot of what he's saying. But now a lot of the youth, a lot of the adolescents, they're actually taking action on it and actually succeeding at it, unfortunately. And he went on to share all these statistics and these stories and these different things. And throughout the conference, there was different sessions that I was really inspired by. So I left the conference super inspired to do something back in my community, right? But I'm not a licensed therapist yet, you know, or anything like that. So I can't offer one-on-one therapy, right? And I'm like, what can I do, God? Like, what can I do? And the idea came to write a book. Again, I love to write and things like that. So I'm like, all right, you know, what's the book? And I Love You kept playing in my head. Like that was the theme that I pulled from the conference. That was like the theme of everything I went. It was like, I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good book title. Especially coming from me. I was like, that sounds kind of corny. But I kept praying on it. I'm like, I couldn't shake this I love you thing. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to title the book I Love You. And I'm going to write these letters of love from myself to black boys, to speak directly to them. And the reason behind the I love you thing was this. If you pick up the book and you pick it up off the shelf and you look at it, it says, I love you. And the first person to say it to you is yourself. You're going to say it within your mind. You're going to be like, I love you. That's enough for you to at least say it to yourself. And then for you to be like, oh, what's this about? You know, let me open this up real quick. And the idea was to write all of these letters of love to black boys and different things like that. So I'm writing, I get about 3 letters in and I'm like, shoot, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to write this many letters. Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna write like 60, 75 letters. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna pour my heart out. And I got like 3 letters in. I was like, I probably got like 3, 4. I got 3, 4 more in me. That's the whole story. So I prayed on it again. I sat it down for a while and had this revelation to include other men. So I made this list out, prayed over the list, took names off, added names on, and I started to reach out to these guys. This was 2019 when I started to reach out to people like, hey, you know, I'm doing this project, I'm doing this book, I love you. You know, this is the theme of the book, this is my vision with it. I would love for you to be a part of it. And I didn't think a lot of the guys would want to be involved, you know, but they all said yes. All of the ones that I was like, I want you on, they said yes. So that was the end of 2019. You know, I'm kind of writing out the plan of the book, the theme of the book. I'm writing all these beginning steps and how I want to really map it out and whatever God places on my heart. And 2019 happens, February 2020, we jump on a Zoom call. I got all the contributors of the book. And I'm like, this is the theme, you know, love black men and children as if they've never been hated. This is what I want to do. This is what we're going to speak to. We're going to speak to these situations. I want you to pour your heart out. We all come from different backgrounds. This is what we're going to do. We're going to uplift and empower and build up self-efficacy and all these different things. March 2020 happens. And as we know, pandemic kicks off. Everything's shut down, right? So we're still working via Zoom. We're getting things done. It doesn't slow down the process. But shortly after that, you have some really tragic events go on. So you have Ahmaud Arbery. You know, you have Breonna Taylor. You have George Floyd, which just sets the world on fire. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And it hit me, and I just felt like God saying to me, like, this is the reason I told you to start this. This was back in 2019 when I started doing this. Before 2020 happened, we didn't know pandemic. We didn't know any of these things were going to happen, right? We didn't know the racial climate was going to just go crazy the way it did. Nobody knew these things, right? You know, 2020 is the year of vision. So
It started off so strong. It's going to be your year.
It's your year. And then all these crazy things happen or whatever. And I'm like, oh. And I realized like, oh, this is an act of obedience. Because prior to me even doing this book, I was speaking in schools and stuff, but it was strictly for my story. I was going to a lot of different colleges and universities and selling my other book and things. And he was like, look, speak specifically to these young men, specifically. It doesn't mean that you're excluding anybody else, but this is what I need you to do specifically. And I was obedient to that. And I was a little nervous at first. I'm like, look, Lord, I'm everywhere with it. I'm talking to Asians. I have, white people I'm talking to. I'm, all these different things.
Right.
I don't know if this is good for business. Right. And it was such a just skewed way of thinking. Right. And kind of putting limits on God. So I'm obedient. We start working on the book. We get the manuscript finished. And I'm like, all right, we need a cover. How do I make this cover with the title "I Love You" and then not look crazy? So I got multiple covers made, and I'm just like, none of these are working out. Like, I'm stressed. I'm like, none of these are working out. They got this cover, and this one looks stupid. We got this one hugging this person. I don't like this.
Yeah.
And I remember it was right after George Floyd. All the protests happened, right, all around the world. And a friend of mine who does photography has his own photography company called Classic Shot. He was in the streets and violent in different places taking photos. Right, of all the protests, and these pictures were powerful. He was putting them in black and white, and they were like each picture he put up had like a story, and it was like, yo, these are powerful, and it hit me like, that's what the cover is going to be. You're going to protest for the love of black men and black boys.
Protest for the love.
So we staged. It's funny. I called him. I'm like, man, he might think this is stupid. Hey, look, man, this is my idea. I want to do a photo shoot for the cover of the book. Oh yeah, that sounds dope. Let's do it. All right, that was easy. So I ended up calling I want to say I had like 20, maybe 25 guys I called. Like, yo, I really need you guys for this project. I need you to meet me here. I want you to wear black t-shirts. And when you get there, I will explain everything. This is off my book cover. So I get about 20 guys, and I make a bunch of signs as if we were going to go protest, right? But there were signs of like affirmation and love. Like, I love you, and black boys are smart. We're this, we're that. All of these signs of affirmation. And it was powerful because we took the photos on the street where my pop-up lived. The pop-up that passed away right before I went out to school. So we took photos right in front of his house. And we lined up on the street, and we literally marched down the street screaming like, I love you. I love you. And it was like, man, this is a moment. And something powerful happened within that moment. There was an older gentleman came out of his house and was like, what are y'all doing? And I'm like, oh, my bad, sir. We're going to be quick. We would just want to take these photos. I'm doing something for this book. And he just stopped me like, I love what y'all are doing.
Wow.
I love to see men getting together to do something positive. He had no idea what we were doing. We marched down the street screaming, I love you. And he's like, man, I love to see this. Keep it up. And I was like, that was almost like a nudge from God. Like, just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. So we do that. We get the cover. The cover has one of my close friends, actually my best man in my wedding. He's actually on the cover of the book, and a few other men, and they're protesting and stuff. I'm not even on the cover of my own book because I realized it's not about me. It's so much bigger than me. And the image that he took was fire compared to anyone with me in it. So I put him on the cover of the book, and we put this thing out as, again, fighting for the love and attention of black boys, fighting for our worth, to show the world that we're worth more, When the world's seen that knee on George Floyd's neck, it's like, you got all these kids that have social media now, and they're seeing this on repeat. So imagine what they're thinking about themselves. Like, yo, this is what I'm worth.
Right.
And it's like, yo, we had to combat that quick.
Yeah.
And we put the book out later that year in 2020, January 2021. The book became a bestseller on Amazon. It became a bestseller in 3 categories. And when I found that out, the day after, I had posted about it. The day after, it became a #1 bestseller.
Wow.
So it went from bestseller in 3 categories to #1 bestseller. And that right there, I was just like, God, what is going on? And it's like, just be obedient. Like, stop asking so many questions. Just be obedient to this.
Yeah.
And from there, it took off. The book started going into multiple schools. I started getting different engagements to come and speak and share about the story of the book and speak at different colleges. And something really cool happened. A professor down at Tennessee State University, amazing woman, she took the book and she put it in as part of her curriculum for her English class. And they had to do assignments based off of the book. And I was like, bro, I couldn't envision this in 2019. I'm just like, I'm going to be obedient. You told me to speak to this issue, this need, and speak to it with unconditional love. And that's what I did. I used the gift that you've given me, and I was obedient to the vision. And it just manifested itself into something incredible. And the book's been doing amazing things ever since. It's made its way from detention centers to prisons to Hawaii to the UK.
Wow.
And it's just been incredible, man. And it's just the power of just really being obedient.
Right.
And sometimes obedience, it can almost make you seem like you're not hearing from God. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling people like, yo, this is what it has to be. It's like, you sure? And it's like, this is what God's telling me. This is what it has to be. And I have to be true to that. And sometimes it's a lonely place.
Yep.
But again, if I wasn't obedient, it's like 2020 happens and it's like, bro, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. But
you could have never known. Yeah.
I could have never known. But because I was obedient, it spoke to an immediate need right there. So there's, you know, thousands upon thousands, hopefully millions soon of young black men and young black boys who feel affirmed, who may not have a dad or who may be going through this situation or who may feel oppressed in a certain way. And you have, you know, 13 men that are doing incredible things like speaking life directly into you. Right. Infused with the word of God in there. You know, so it's powerful, man. And I'm just honored that I was able to be used as a vessel. Yeah. And for me, I'm just trying to use all the gifts that God's blessed me with for his glory, and show up the best way I can in excellence, man. So it's been powerful.
Man, one of my mentors always says, you never know what's on the other side of obedience. Like, you have no idea what's on the other side. So I just want to commend you for being obedient and taking this step to do that. Yeah. Man, the book is extremely powerful. Just the visual of all these men writing letters to young men, specifically all black men writing letters to young black boys. Mm-hmm. Man, I read through it. It's just extremely powerful. So, man, I don't know what else to say about it. It's a great book. You guys need to listen to it.
Yeah, we'll have the links in the description.
Yes, we'll have the links.
Definitely check it out. I mean, it is powerful. It's a great book.
And now, if I can say this, it's not just for black boys. You know, I would say the biggest purchaser of books are from women who want to understand more. You know, the professor in Tennessee State that bought the book, she's not a black woman. Right. The one that's teaching the class, she's actually a white woman. The book is for everybody, and it's for us to understand each other, because even though we're writing these letters of love to black boys, the whole beginning of the book is speaking to love. Right. Which is universal for all of us. It's speaking to the concept of love. Right. You know, I broke it down into 4 parts and really taught lessons within that. And I believe it's a book that we all can kind of learn from.
Yeah, that's great. Can you break down the four parts of love then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I broke it into 4 parts, and this was my own experiences plus studying. So it's listen, be open-hearted, validate, and encourage. So these were 4 things, one that I noticed I was missing, you know, kind of growing up and things like that. And these were 4 things that I had put into practice prior to writing the book that I noticed worked, especially with young men and young women. I noticed this concept of love worked because love is far more than a word. It's like, it's action.
Totally.
Like, you know, even though we've normalized now, especially amongst my friend group, like saying I love you, our love goes to another level with action. Yep. My boy Tone coming to get me when I got the boot on, that's love. He ain't even have to say it. Right. You know, you looking out for one of your friends when they need something, that's love. You being the listening ear and not saying anything, no judgment, that's love. Yeah. So that was the concept, to really listen. One, because we just don't listen at all. You know, a lot of people just don't listen. They want to get their points out. And
we had a conversation about that the other day.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. I mean, think about it though, especially for young males and young black males specifically. It's like we don't feel heard or seen. So it's like, real quick, let's just listen. I don't got nothing to say. I just want to listen to you. What's going on with you? And I noticed that worked. And being open-hearted, right? You hear open-minded all the time, but when was the last time you were open-hearted? Really able to embrace the situation, whatever they come to you with, whatever happened, having a pure heart, you know, purifying your motives. You always talk about with the word. And then you have validate. That's a big thing. In those locker rooms, having those conversations, being around other men, they were validating me, validating my feelings, and that made me feel seen. That made me feel important. That didn't make me feel like I was lower than them or anything. It was like, okay, what I have to say is valid. And a lot of times for young boys, it's like, yo, a lot of what you have to say is valid. But sometimes as adults, we kind of like push them down and diminish them, like, oh, you still a kid. It's like, nah, you got some valid stuff to say, and I appreciate your opinion is respected. You're a human being. And encourage is just that's a given, to encourage and uplift, you know, and never to tear down. So with those 4 things, I believe you have, you know, the perfect chair. But without one of them, when one of them is missing, that chair can get real wobbly.
Right. That's great, man. That's so great. That's why I said I feel like kindred spirits. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We remember the fall retreat a couple years ago that you came to?
Yeah.
So we had like a men's session, and I was a former athlete myself, and in a position now where I'm overseeing dozens and dozens of young guys, and from every background you can imagine. And so at one of the retreats that we did on the men's session, I wanted to impart that same heart. And so we did 3 affirmations. I love you, I see you, and I'm proud of who you're becoming.
That's powerful.
And so I just absolutely love the book.
It was awkward at first.
It was very awkward. Some of the guys, they didn't get over the awkward.
Yeah.
Eyeball to eyeball. None of the shifty eyes. Like, man,
look you directly in the
I
eye.
love you. I'm proud of you. And but we need that, right? And so we're starving for that. Yeah. And so many guys, and it's our nature to want affirmation. And so we look for it in all the wrong places, or we get hyper focused on something, and then we falter because that's life, and then we feel like our world's crumbling down. Like, you're bigger than that one moment. So,
That's real.
love what you're doing, man. I want to read a section and ask you just to respond to it. You didn't write this letter, but just the importance of this trait in relationships. So, the title is accountability. We're talking about very open-hearted, encouraging, but we also got to keep a standard, right? And so that's the kind of balance to it. So I want to hear your response to it. So it says this: if you have read this far, I am to assume that you want to be on the front line of refinement and have accepted your rite of passage into the kingdom of kings. Accountability is your portion. Accountability can be defined as taking responsibility for your actions. Being accountable is a life of confession. Identifying your fears means you only need to change your perspective. Accountability is not a burden or a relinquishment of joy and a reckless abandonment in your youth. Accountability is a badge of honor. It is a characteristic that makes the difference between a follower and a leader, a borrower and a lender. It is a challenge and not to be taken lightly, but it is a factor that will lead to your best days and greatest self. I wish someone wouldn't have spared my feelings at the cost of my destiny at a much earlier age. And it ends, I love you, Tyrell.
That's good, man.
Yeah, that's good.
Peace, man. That was, man, them dudes were pouring their heart out, man.
Yeah.
That was, whoo, that's fire right there.
Yeah.
Because I feel exactly what he's saying, man. And that accountability is everything. It's the traits that, make you who you are. It's the traits that make you a leader. That especially for men, that build us up as men. And not having that accountability, you kind of stay in those childish ways, right? Because you see accountability, a lot of us see it as a burden, but it's actually, it's a beautiful privilege to have that. And he spoke very beautifully to that, and kind of like, man, I wish I would have had this earlier. Having that sense of responsibility makes me feel important.
Right.
It teaches me some things, some lessons that I needed to have that I've missed because I wasn't accountable to anything or anyone. And you lose growth when you don't have accountability. When you have accountability, you'll do things that'll help you grow. It's like having an accountability partner for the gym. It's like, on my own, I might go. Today it's raining outside. It's like, nah, I'm gonna miss this. And that ultimately hinders your results. But if you have somebody that's holding you accountable in your mind, you'll be like, oh, man, I know they're going to say something. Let me get up. But ultimately, it benefits you. And that aids in your results to really help you. So that accountability, man, that's powerful, man. That was amazing.
He did that.
Yeah.
He did that. Yeah, he did that.
You don't have to be a young black boy to benefit from this book.
Right.
No, you don't.
Powerful.
Man.
I mean, underline that. This is your portion, right? Welcome to the tribe, the King of Kings. Come on, this is your rite of initiation. That was so good, man.
Yeah, I gotta call him. That was incredible.
That
was fire, bro.
We gotta have him up next.
Yeah, we gotta have Ty.
Come on, Tyrell, let's go.
He's
That
fire.
was great.
Wait,
man.
so playing off that question, who were you accountable to?
I'm accountable pretty much to anybody that I have contact with. Obviously my family and things like that, but the people who I get to speak life into, when I go and speak to these kids, or I go to these colleges, or I'm at, churches, or wherever I am, I'm accountable to you all, to serve you as if I'm working for God, because I am. So I'm accountable to all of those things. I'm accountable to living in excellence and always giving 120%, whether you're paying me, 10 grand or you're not paying me at all. It's like, I'm still accountable. I still need to show up and serve in a way where it's not transactional, where you have to give me anything.
Yeah.
So for me, anybody that I impact, man, I feel, or anybody that I come across, I feel accountable to you to show up in a certain way, to where when you leave me, you know, when you leave my presence or everything, you feel closer to God, but you don't feel worse about yourself. Like, I don't want people to be around me and then they leave me and they feel insecure.
Right.
Or they feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. It's like, nah, I never want you to feel that way. I want you to feel empowered and inspired. And to me, again, that's anybody who I come across. I just feel accountable to make you feel that way or make you understand that. Whether that's me having the opportunity to actually sit and talk with you, or that's just me like, hey, look, I got your gas, it's on me.
Yeah. That's good, man.
Man, Nate, we just have a few more questions for you. We want to respect your time. One, I want to ask, how do you stay inspired? Like, you seem like the type of person who is always pouring out. Who pours into you? How do you stay inspired when you're constantly pouring out to others?
Yeah, I stay inspired by taking the spotlight off of myself and actually placing it on others. Honestly, if I was always focused on me, I would be super lazy. I wouldn't do a lot of things. I would lose inspiration quick. But because I've taken that spotlight off of myself and placed it on this person or this community or this family member, it allows me to stay inspired and encouraged, going back to accountability, to where it's like I got to serve them in a way. And then there's very practical things that I do as well. Definitely reading my word, praying, things like that, having different communities that I'm in where people just pour into me, you know, where the relationships are very mutual. And then there's other things, like literally on my watch, I have this picture of my niece, my nephew, and my little brother. And it's just simple reminders like, okay, yep, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to roll. Let's get moving. Let's make things happen. I used to have a picture of my pop-up and my dash of my car. And it was a picture of me and him on like Christmas years and years ago when I was like 2-3 years old. And just little things inspire me like, okay, you're carrying the torch now. You got the mic now. Yeah. You're the one leading the way. And things like that really inspire me. And outside of that, just nature, just seeing the creation that's around me, I'm inspired. Like we were talking, me and my cousin, when we got here, I'm like, man, something about Philly, man, that always inspired me. Outside of the way it smells in this corner, in this alleyway, it's always something that inspires me. You see somebody working on something, you see some art, you see some beauty, you just like, man, this is dope. And I get this inspiration.
That's great, man.
Yeah, man.
You want to ask a question about vulnerability?
Yeah. This is a very important question. So in your opinion, what is the biggest thing hindering men from being vulnerable, and how can they learn to be vulnerable?
The biggest thing, I believe, is fear. It's fear of the unknown. You know, it's fear of being judged. It's fear of losing pride. It's fear of not being accepted and then not being loved. You know, it's fear of if I let you in, you're gonna hurt me. If I let you into this, I'm exposed now, you know. And the reality is we only know, or we can only change that if we do something different.
Right.
Like that fear, you living on that side of fear, there's this healing, there's this love that you want that's on the other side of that fence. But the fear is keeping you away from even approaching the fence. Like you're like, man, I want to get over there, but I got this fear that's, what if it don't work out? It's always what if it doesn't? But it's like, what if it does? You know, we quickly go to the negative. We quickly have this like pessimistic thinking, but it's always like, what if you transition that to be like, okay, let me try this positive thing. Let me just see, you know, let me see what happens. I'm over here suffering in silence.
Right.
Let me just see what happens if I share this. I think that's the biggest thing. It's that fear, man. It's unknown. I know that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
It's like, I know that this side, like, it's terrible, it sucks, I hate it, but I'm afraid of the other side because I've never been exposed to it.
Right.
And we fear what we're not exposed to, what we don't know.
Yeah.
It's good, man.
Definitely. Fear of being judged, right? That's the number one thing.
Yeah, nobody wants to be judged or made fun of.
Nobody.
I remember growing up as a kid, and it's like, you don't want to be joked on. You see somebody getting joked on next to you, you just join in like, oh, that's crazy.
Because
you don't want them to
get
get
The moment
So it's
you're
like,
quiet for too long,
I'm jumping in. I'm
Get
like,
out the line of fire.
it's like, and I feel bad because it's like, oh, that's my boy. Oh, his sneakers is this. Like, oh, my God, that's crazy. And it's like, because I don't want you to get me. And that's the thing,
funny.
man. It carries over until we're adults. It may not be like getting joked on, but it can definitely be feeling judged.
Yeah.
To where you try to jump on the other side and gang pile on somebody else and their situations and their insecurities and their flaws.
Yeah.
When you're, you got your own things going on.
Definitely.
Yeah. Nate, what's your hope for the Black community?
My hope is that we can be consistent. And what I mean by that is this. I believe that despite what the media says, despite what, what's going on, I believe that we are making a lot of progress in all different types of areas. Economically, I believe that the conversation around mental health is starting to happen a lot more. And we still have such a way to go, so much trauma from, over 400 plus years and all these things and these racial injustice, these situations that are happening. I believe that if we can remain consistent over time, maybe not in my lifetime, but I believe things can change. I have hope for that. But if we aren't consistent, it goes back to like, we know what it's like when we aren't consistent, when we don't show up, when we aren't pressing on this issue, when we let the gas go, So I'm praying that we are more consistent and diligent in progression. And I have hope in that. And, with our generation, the millennials and the generation behind us coming in, I believe that we're at a place where we're not okay with how things are.
Right.
And we have a lot of energy behind us where we're like, look, we're going to change something. We've done this for so many years. We're tired of it. And we're changing this. We're going to step up and be bold about it. And if we're consistent with that, I believe change can really happen.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Side question. That was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Love it. How do you help men get out of passivity? Because I see, it's easy to like put everything and be driven into basketball, classic, right? Sports, like, man, I'm just going to channel everything I got. All the negative emotion is going out on the field. But a lot of guys now these days are falling into the other side where they're passive, getting into pornography, getting into video games, getting into just scrolling and watching for hours. So how do you help get young men out of that passive place, or any man that for that matter?
Yeah. That's a great question. Something that I think about with that is those are different coping methods, right, for a bigger issue. And I think the way that we kind of get out of that, or the way that I try to help people get out of it, is like, you've coped with it, but it's still there. For that brief moment, that 1-2 videos you watched, that weed you smoked for however long, tomorrow that issue is still there.
Right.
So you coping with it or trying to find different methods to cope with it isn't necessarily addressing whatever the issue is. It's going to be there tomorrow. You can run as much as you want. You can smoke as much as you want. You can watch as much pornography as you want. Those issues that you have that are eating away at you, they're still there. So at some point, it's either address it or this thing is going to take over your life and ultimately it's going to kill you. Maybe not physically, but definitely emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all those different things. So instead of us kind of moseying around the issue, let's put on our big boy pants and let's address the issues head on. So we don't have to feel this guilt after we do these other things.
Right.
After you watch the video, you're just like, oh man, I feel low. It's like, let's stop doing that. Here's the solution. Let's address that you have these lust issues. Let's address these other issues that you have at home, amongst your friends, the things you're going through. And let's not keep reverting back to something that we know is temporary. Right. Let's try to make some permanent changes.
That's great, man. That's great. So many things in life are coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm convinced that the majority of interactions are just very sophisticated defense mechanisms. Like, I don't want you to see me this way, or the masks I put on, or even the bravado, or the big personality, or the little personality, right? All these things are just, I don't want you to get close enough to hurt me. It's unfortunate. So, yeah, man. So, Nate, you're crushing it. You're doing a lot of great things, making a huge impact. Yep. When it's all said and done, and they lay you in the ground, and there's that epitaph on your tombstone, how do you want to be remembered?
Man, such a great question. I I think about things like that often. It's for me, I want to make sure. All right, so I'm gonna give you like a really brief story.
Okay.
A brother of mine shared this with me. It's not my story, but I thought it was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, imagine it's the end of your life, right? You've lived your life out however long you want to live, 80 years, 90, 100, whatever. You pass away and you meet God. And God says to you, why didn't you use the gifts and fulfill the purpose that I placed you on earth for? Mm. And it's like, what's your response to that? For me, I want to make sure that when I get there, I don't even have to get that question. Mm-hmm. You know, if that's going to happen, it's like I want to make sure I'm like, look, I emptied out everything. Like Nate's good. And I want to be known as someone who, you know, emptied the tank, who used everything God had within me for the purpose that he had planned on this earth. And I want to be known for someone who normalized love in every aspect, in every way possible. Mm. And really just lived my life in that way where it's like, I'm going to glorify you with everything I do. No, I won't be perfect. I'm flawed. I'm going to mess up a lot. I'm going to make mistakes. I might yell at somebody. I don't know. Mm. But at the end of my life, you know, praying that it's a nice, long, fulfilling life, I want to be able to look back and see, be like, man, I left it all out there. Yeah. It was nothing else that I had, that God had for me, where it's like, I should have did this. You know, you've been to those cookouts where you got the uncle around. It's like, yo, man, you know, I could have did this. I should have been hooping here. Right. I could have been, you know, I could have been with the OJ singing. It's just like, well, but did you? Why didn't you? And it's like, I don't want to be that person. It's like, I could have did this, or I could have done that. Yeah. But I allowed, you know, my job, or I allowed this thing to slow me down, or this person, or my insecurities. I don't want to have any of those excuses, 'cause I don't think God wants to hear my excuses. Right. I want to come be like, God, I laid it all out. You placed me there for this purpose, this path, this journey. I went along that thing. It was difficult, but I fulfilled it. And that's how I want to be remembered.
That's great, man.
That's extremely powerful. We just got one more question for you. Before we ask it, I just want to give you your roses. I love giving people their roses while they're here. Bro, we see what you're doing out here, inspiring men in all communities. And I just want to tell you, keep going, because it's needed, and you're hitting a felt need. Yeah. And I appreciate you for doing it.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
You got anything before we...
You stole my thunder.
Wrap it up.
That's it. Yeah.
He stole my job. That's my job. You feel me? I'm a thunder now. Right. All right. Our last question. We call it our wild question. Nate, when did you know that you became a man?
I knew I became a man when I stopped trying to be the man. When I stopped trying to be the man, and when I relinquished control to God. When I stopped trying to control everything. And when I stopped allowing, not that I was ever in control in the first place, but I acknowledged that, okay, God, you're in control. I keep trying my way, but you're in control. And also when I stopped allowing my emotions to drive my life, and I kicked them to the back seat. And it's like, you with me, you can hang out, you cool, you can touch the window or whatever, but I'm gonna drive. And when I started leading that way, that's when I was like, okay, I'm a man. And I put away childish things.
That's as good as it gets. That's as good as it gets.
Golden.
You can be with me. I'm driving. I love that. Nate, you should write a book or something, man.
I'm thinking about it, man. I'm thinking about it.
You should like be a coach or something.
Maybe do a podcast. You ever speak to people? Like,
I've been thinking about it, man. For real.
Awesome, man. Well, Nate, thanks so much for being on the Wyld Way podcast.
Thank you.
We'll have links. Oh, if people want to connect with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can pretty much find me anywhere at Nate Evans Jr. I don't know how I was able to get that on all the social media platforms, but it's literally Nate Evans Jr. on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, I believe Facebook, YouTube, and my website. So God blessed me to be able to get that. I guess I'm the only Nate Evans Jr.
In the world.
But yeah, you can find me anywhere on that. You know, I'm not Hollywood. I respond to every comment, every message if I can get to it. And I love to interact with people and just meet new people. I love meeting new people and learning about their experiences. So please reach out to me. And yeah, I would love to connect with people.
Awesome. So we'll have all the links to that in the description below. Make sure connect with Nate, get the book, check it out. You won't be disappointed. Super encouraging, super inspiring. And so with that, go be wild.
Let's get it.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Wyld Way podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, subscribe, comment below, or share with a friend. Thanks, guys.